I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Edward Berger, director of All Quiet on the Western Front, Germany's official submission for Best International Feature at the 95th Academy Awards. Edward, first of all, can you talk about what it means for you to represent Germany this year and what you hope to say about German cinema through this film?
God, that's a daunting task and a question. So, I don't know. I don't aspire to speak for Germany. So it just happens to be chosen by the country, and that's, of course, it's always a wonderful thing because more people get to see it. It travels more around the world. There's bigger interest and so forth. So that's wonderful. But so the main thing for me to make this movie was really to tell this German story. It's essentially a very German novel. It's the most successful German book, I think, written and published. It's had the most copies sold, and I've read it like when I was really young, and then again in my 20s, and it always stayed with me. And when the idea came to me put to me by my producer and good friend Malte Grunert, I thought, wow, what a great, why didn't I think of this? You know, it's been sitting there for 90 years, and it's a real opportunity to tell that side of the story.
Yeah, I mean, the classic American version was told in 1930, and that's held in such high regard. Did that concern you to have comparisons to that at all? Or were you just like, no, this is a German story, it's time to be told from a German perspective, and you have so much more technology and a different way that you can tell this story today than they could at that time?
Well, that film is really good. So, and I ignored it, to be honest, and ascribed that to idiocy, maybe, and ignorance. Yeah, and we just went for it. And then while I was making it, or while I was rewriting it and storyboarding it, I sometimes thought, like, why the hell did I do this? You know, like, what big shoes to fill. But then you essentially just have to go for it. And for me, the biggest motivation was that usually those type of stories are, you know, being told in America or England. And for a long time, I thought it was only, you know, financing was the main reason, because you have American stars and English stars and the language and there's a bigger reach, and you need quite a bit of money to make a movie like this, you know? So And then I realized eventually it's not only the financing, it's also the stories you are able to tell. The American, let's stick to the Americans. You know, they're since I'm speaking to one. You know, so the you know, you were roped into the war, you know, twice and against the will, and liberated Europe from fascism and so forth. England the same. You know, and there's a totally different legacy that stays with you and the kids, the generations to follow, and the filmmakers to follow. There's a story that you can tell of, I guess, heroism, and there's a sense of pride in your country and honor about what happened. And there's nothing like that in Germany. There's only shame and guilt and horror and sense of responsibility towards history, and in the generations to follow also. And I thought that just gives a very different perspective and a very different feeling towards the movie, because all the decisions that we take as filmmakers, they're informed by how we grow up and what we feel and how we see it. And so essentially, hopefully, in the end, a very different film comes out of it. And I thought that might be interesting to share with other countries.
Yeah, and it's a horror story in some ways, or at least a cautionary tale of what happens when you're a young kid and you're just pushed into the trenches and sort of expected to become, you know, a killer. But the tools were different, the weapons were different, the uniforms, everything. So what sort of intense research had to go into this before you could get it on the screen the way that you wanted to?
Well, mostly reading for me. And then I had a wonderful team of, you know, the costume designer, the production designer, every department pulled together their research. And for example, I mean, really simple, the uniforms. We made the uniforms from old fabric, hundreds of uniforms, and they are felt. It's kind of a felt material, and you have these, I don't know, 300 soldiers, extras running across mud and through the rain and through the snow, and their clothes very quickly, get drenched in water, and they don't weigh, I don't know, 30 pounds, like without water, they suddenly weigh 60 or 70 pounds. And so it's really, you realize very quickly that material is really not suited for people who have to fight in the mud and in the cold, because also the water doesn't go out of it anymore, and it freezes, in the snow and in the cold, it just freezes. And suddenly you have this clammy, very heavy piece of clothing, and you have to lug it around. So I really wasn't envying the actors who ran around with 70 pounds or 80 pounds worth of, weighing clothes through the mud in the cold. And so that's one piece of equipment, for example, that you suddenly realize that what people were wearing at the time.
And this is Felix Kramer's screen debut, and he gives just a knockout performance. His eyes are so expressive. Can you talk about what it was like for Felix to lead this film?
Well, I found him he's a first-time actor in front of the camera. He's in a very big theater in Vienna. He's part of the ensemble, and we found him there because the producer's wife works in that theater, and she showed me his picture, and I thought, oh, this kid looks great. He has an old-fashioned, very transparent face, very unusual face, and we wanted someone who has never been seen on camera before, because the role is so iconic, the book is so iconic. So we don't want as much as Felix or Paul Bäumer, the character, goes into the war with innocence, we wanted the actor sort of to go into this movie with innocence, and the audience to embrace him with innocence, not to associate him with any other roles. And, oh, I've seen this kid in that movie before. He sort of needed to be really fresh. And so we were really lucky to find him. It took about 4 castings. And the first casting, I thought, he's great, but, like, how does he feel in a uniform and boots, and how does it change his gait, the way he walks? And so we called him back and put another uniform on him and the boots, and suddenly he felt much more earthy and grounded. And he really grew into this role throughout the 4 or 5 castings that we called him back for. And by the time we made up our mind, we knew there's just no way we can be wrong. This is the kid. And for him, I assume it was quite a weight to carry. I think he told me the other day he was at a picnic when we called him. And he was like, yeah, we hung up, and he was at a picnic with his friends. We were like, yeah, I got the role. And suddenly he was like, oh, shit, now I'm going to have to do it, because it's such a responsibility. And he had a lot of training, and he got physically fit and did a lot of running with weighty vests and did a lot of research himself. And I think, for example, there's a scene where he's 10 minutes in the movie. So, 3-4 days of shooting, locked into a crater with a dying Frenchman. And I think scenes like that kind of, he carried it with him for quite a while after the movie. I think it took us all a couple of months to just get rid of all the mud and the blood and all the stuff that comes with it.
What was the biggest technical challenge of the film? Because it's a technical achievement. The cinematography is beautiful. There's obviously a lot of special effects and sound that goes into a war movie. So what's your perspective of all the all-stars that you had working with you behind the camera?
Well, you really needed a top-notch crew, which I was lucky enough to have. And it was a massive battlefield. I don't know, 10 football fields, or I don't know how big it was. It was really big. So, and obviously the actors need to run across it. And I really wanted these very long runs, unedited runs, just running with the characters. And then we dug the trenches in January and built the battlefield, and it was all sort of molded with trucks and so forth, and excavators, and put the barbed wire there and all that stuff. And then we realized, or we thought about it before, but it was, once it was like, if it rains 3 days in a row, it becomes a mud bath and you can't run anymore. You can't, I once had to rescue the cinematographer. I was in the car, we had done a test, it was getting dark, and he didn't show up. And I got out of the car, and it was an airfield outside of Prague, like an hour outside of Prague. It was freezing and it was dark. And so I was calling, and suddenly he was like, help, help. I hear his voice. Yeah. And then we go into the battlefield, and he was sunk into the mud up to his hips. And he couldn't get out because it was so muddy. And so we got a crane and to pull him out of this mud bath. And so to film in that, we basically, had to figure out what piece of equipment to, not be shaky all the time, but to be fairly steady and to really be able to look the characters in the eyes, and to, we basically built roads inside this battlefield where we knew we could travel on and where the actors could travel on. And so that just took a lot of research and time to figure out, and then the piece of camera equipment that was best to handle that kind of rugged environment.
Well, Edward, it's a great achievement. Such an incredible film. It's been a pleasure speaking with you about All Quiet on the Western Front, and best of luck to you throughout everything else for the rest of this award season and everything else. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Santiago Mitre, director of Argentina, 1985, Argentina's entry for Best International Feature at the 95th Academy Awards. And Santiago, can you talk about what this means for you to represent Argentina this year, and what you hope that you can represent for Argentina filmmaking?
That's a wide answer, but I'm carrying in the title, so I think the title already said that I was representing Argentina. It was a nice surprise that the Academy of Argentina selected the film to represent us, but I feel it's obviously the film is speaking about a very important subject, about how Argentina dealt with the transition to democracy after the horrors of the dictatorship that tortured the country during the 70s, and it's an event that is super important and super meaningful for my country, and it was not so well remembered inside my country, and of course not well known outside Argentina. So for me, it's super important that the film is being watched and being appreciated, not only in my country but also in other places where the film is being shown through the platform or in the theatrical releases we're doing. And to be part of this Oscar thing, it's great because it gives a lot more opportunities to talk about the film, and I'm introducing many screenings and having the opportunity to speak to many people in different places in the world. So it's a great experience, and it's been super interesting and many times moving also.
And it's a story about a team of lawyers that take on the head of Argentina's bloody military dictatorship during the 1980s, and it's based on a true story. Why has this sort of been forgotten, and what is the significance it has had on Argentina, and what made you want to bring it back up to the surface?
Well, I cannot say why it was forgotten, probably because it happened sometime, and many generations of people were born after that, and the memory of this event was was becoming a little bit blurry. But then some people start to forget how important to take care of democracy is. So for me, I really wanted to work on this subject for many years. It's a sort of a personal film in a way. My mother used to work in justice during her whole life, and I was raised in that values, the importance of justice to consolidate democracy. And this event, I think it was symbolizing something very important that it could make me do a film about the importance of justice, the importance of democracy, and how to keep alive the memories, so not to commit, so that countries or societies not to commit again the same mistakes sometimes I feel, nowadays also it's been terrible how so many speeches that seem to not to respect democracy as it is. It's growing all over the world. So I think it was an important film for me to do as a filmmaker, of course, but also as a citizen of my country, and I think it's an event where many people from different countries can feel reflected.
And Ricardo Darín plays Julio Cesar Stracera. What did you see in him as an actor that made him perfect for the role, and how does he encompass that for you?
Ricardo, for me, it's the best actor in the world. I have the opportunity to become friends with him after my previous film where we worked together. And it's a huge pleasure. He's like the best actor and the best person to handle a film with. And now he's also the producer. He was involved in the project since the beginning with me. I think I told the idea that I wanted to make a film about this, and he showed me instant interest and wanted to be part, and then he get involved also as a producer. So we've been working on the film for I don't know many years together. By he read all the drafts of the script and give notes, and then during the shooting we were very much in contact, of course, like every director and actor are, but also he was being like a creative ally that I needed on set sometimes when I was a little bit confused. That sometimes happens. And now, he's perfect. The way it's difficult because this prosecutor, he did this speech, which was amazing, and tough, and he. And it's a speech that remains in the minds of the people who knew Stracera, the character. So it was a difficult thing on how to approach to a character that we discussed a lot, and I think his input on the way he plays with how do you say, like subtle but also intense, and giving a lot of emotion. It's great. I'm super happy. I want to do a lot of films with Ricardo.
He's fantastic in this. And I understand that you were able to film in the area, in the courthouse that this trial actually took place in. How did that happen? Are they still conducting trials there, or they just let you have it? How did you get that space?
Yeah, it may seem like a little bit irresponsible, like we were stopping justice in the country because of doing a film. No, it was not like that. Now it's a place that it's used for events, like special events from the justice. Is like so the trials, the other trials will keep going. But I have to give the credit to my producers on that, because it was something that I asked. For me, it was super important to shoot in the same place because I knew that I wanted to use some archive, some of the original footage of the trial at some point. So to use the same place was something important, because we will never be able to rebuild a replica exactly in another place. So it was something that I asked because of that. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to use a mixture of textures during the film and during the trial, and so to be able to use the footage of the real people that gave the testimonies that during the trial. It was something that it was very interesting to think about in the 85 when the real trial happened. It was only 1 year after the dictatorship ended. So most of the people who gave testimony, the people that kidnapped, tortured them, or disappeared their relatives, they were still around. They could be they were free, and they could be inside the courtroom. Even it was secured, but so it was something very risky to testify for them in the trial, and very brave also, and the decision that the people from the judges took was to let the broadcast, but not to show the faces, so that they can keep the identity of faces not being recognized in a way. So what we watched during the trial for so many years was the back, the necks of the people talking. So for me, now that we be doing this reenactment of the trial, it was important to see the faces of the people who was testifying, so we can try to imagine the face of those who were giving testimony, and to try to understand what they feel and what it could mean to give the testimony at that point. But I also at some point I needed to refer to these these iconic images of the necks and of the people who were testifying. So we designed like a sort of system with my GOP. We were shooting while we were doing the scenes, we were building a fake archive with a old U-matic camera, which was the same one that was used during the trial. So we could go smoothly from our footage done in 2021 to the fake archive, and then the fake archive through some small screens in the prop cameras that we were using. We went into the real archive, and then come out from the real archive to the and all the time we were fluctuating on that. So I think it's something that I feel it gives not only the truth that the recreation event, so that but it's also it's also important for what the film is symbolizing and how it wants to work with the recreation of the trial.
Yeah, the way you weaved it, you interlocked sort of that archival footage with new footage. It's incredible. And thanks for spending time to talk to us today about Argentina 1985. And best of luck with the film and the upcoming award season and everything going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Stacy Perskie, producer for Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, from Oscar-winning director Alejandro Inarritu. This is Mexico's entry for Best International Feature at the 95th Academy Awards. And can you talk about what you hope to highlight about Mexican cinema with this film, and what it means to represent Mexico this year?
It's an honor to represent Mexico. It's a particular year with very powerful films, and we're very grateful to the Mexican Academy and the members that voted to choose Bardo. And the film, I think what it highlights the most is kind of that it's a love letter to Mexico and to Mexican identity. There's a line in the film that says that Mexico is a state of mind. And and it does. Growing up in Mexico, I was born and raised in Mexico, and it really does feel that way. I really identify with that line, and it's there's so much about this film that talks about being Mexican, and I think it's a way of understanding what being Mexican is. It's there's a lot of historical aspects weaved into the film, and a lot of themes that are quite current also politically, but it's also about family, and I think you can identify, a lot of people can identify with that. So the main character going back to Mexico after being away for so many years, living in the US, he comes back to kind of find himself with his country and with his culture, and sort of what it was for him when he left, and sort of what is no longer for him anymore. So it's again, I think it's Alejandro, when I read the script for the first time, I felt that, that it was a real way of encapsulating, Mexican identity. So, I think that's, very, very strong in the film, and we're very happy that can, be seen everywhere in the world.
And it's not a traditional movie. I mean, it's like a lucid dream. It's been described by some. So what were your thoughts when you read the script? Were you sort of like, surprised by it? Is this when you're like, okay, like maybe not for everyone, but I'm going to trust a 4-time Oscar winner to take this on and make and believe in him to bring this to life?
Well, it's interesting because for me, reading the script, it was such a journey. It's like I enjoyed it so much, and I was so excited by so many aspects of it, going from one scene to the next, and all the images were very lucid, very vivid, and it was and very powerful, right? It's like I identified with a lot of them. I could see all the nuances and things that I thought were very funny, but also very moving and very profound. Honestly, I didn't ever think that it was a a film that wouldn't be for everybody. Quite the contrary. It's like for me, it was very interesting that for days after reading the script for the first time, I kept having images, like a lot of the images stuck in my mind, like no other script that I had ever read before, right? So I was, it was incredible. And, it's like I was very, very touched by it, very inspired by it, and very moved and excited to be able to be a part of it.
And some scenes are just on a massive scale. I mean, I think Alejandro said at one point there's something like 800 extras in one scene, and it's hot, and it's the pandemic, and people have masks, and then they forget to take their mask off, and you have to reshoot a sequence. Was there any particular scene or parts of the film that just sort of left you in awe the most, that like he was able to accomplish, that impressed you?
Well, I mean, I would say for me, there's more than one. I would say, there's several parts of the film. When we were shooting downtown, when we were shooting like the California Dancing Club. But I would say, especially, there's this moment in the film where there's a caravan of immigrants that is coming down a hill at dawn, at sunrise, and there's like a lot of mist, and it's a huge valley, and there's like a very, very long line of cars in traffic that are basically held up by this caravan crossing a road, a highway. And for me, like seeing that come together, Alejandro has this incredible process of preparation, and and a lot of this film was very, he had a lot of it, every single frame of it in his mind, and everything was storyboarded, and a lot of it was rehearsed. So actually seeing that shot and that scene come together with all the immigrants coming down the hill, to me was unbelievable. It was a really beautiful, very strong moment, and it's one of my favorites in the film. Yeah.
And it's his first film fully filmed in Mexico since Amores Perros in 2000. So he said it's not biographical, but he said he knows who this man Silveria is. What do you think inspired him to return to make this film in Mexico for the first time in over 20 years?
Well, he's mentioned a lot himself that, he wanted to make a very personal film, and it was kind of like, kind of an inward journey. And I think kind of reconnecting with his own experience of living in the US for so many years, and having this relationship with Mexico, where obviously he has all his family and friends, and he goes back and forth, and his family, so I think for me, that's what seems to have basically triggered, wanting to talk about this specific stage in his life and his experiences, and also talking about his country and the relationship between, the US and Mexico, and being an immigrant and, living in the US, and, and what that means to him.
Can you talk about Daniel Jimenez Cacho, who leads the cast, and what led to his casting, and what impressed you most about his performance?
Well, that for me, Daniel is, the best actor in Mexico, and he's incredible. He's I've had the opportunity of working with him before, and he gets stronger and stronger, and he's like a chameleon. You don't really, every character he does is you see something different. And so when Alejandro decided it was Daniel, and when I learned that was the case, that it wasn't surprising to me at all. It was quite the perfect match. But for them, it was kind of about their connection, and there wasn't a casting process. They, more than a casting or an audition, they had a 5-hour long conversation where they, talked about where each of them were in their lives. And, and there were so many, it was very serendipitous, there were so many things that connected them. And they were, they have similar age, similar family structure. They've been married for 30 years. That, they both have kids of sort of the same age. So it, there was so much, and I think, there was also quite a strong spiritual connection, and Daniel talks about describing this meditation he had done a few weeks prior to meeting Alejandro, and talking about the images that he saw during that meditation. And, Alejandro was very surprised to hear that, because it was like he had already read the script in a lot of ways. So it was, I think after that initial meeting, it was an immediate connection that grew and grew stronger as the film process came together.
Well, yeah, he leads with a tremendous performance. And Stacy, thanks for spending time with me and talking about Bardo, and best of luck with the upcoming Oscar nominations and everything else moving forward, and enjoy the ride. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Colm Bairéad, director of The Quiet Girl, Ireland's entry for Best International Feature at the 95th Academy Awards. And Colm, I'll just start by asking, how does it feel to represent Ireland this year? And what do you hope to, represent about Irish filmmaking on the world scale?
Well, I mean, it feels amazing. It's a real honor to have been selected by the Irish Film and Television Academy to represent Ireland. And to be, in the company of such amazing films. This year is such a strong year in this category. Yeah, we're just incredibly proud of the fact that this is not only an Irish film, but it's also an Irish language film. And historically, the Irish language has been underrepresented in Irish cinema. It's, as you may know, Irish is the official language of Ireland, but it's actually a minority language, and it's on UNESCO's endangered languages list. And prior to sort of the last few years now, we've seen some Irish language films being made, but before that, you could kind of count on one hand the amount of Irish language feature films that had ever been released theatrically here in Ireland. So yeah, we're just very proud that we have a film that's speaking to the world, I guess, in our own native tongue, and that's being embraced by audiences worldwide. And it's also, it's a film that's done really well here in Ireland at the box office. So people here are very much behind it, and it's kind of brought about this new sort of conversation about the language and about our own connection to it. And I think people are really behind the film because of that it's people are hoping that the film can sort of travel far beyond our own borders, which has been the case so far. And now just being part of this conversation in terms of the Oscar, this particular category, It's great. There's never been an Irish language film shortlisted or nominated for this category. So yeah, we're very excited to be here.
And you mentioned it's doing well. It's broken box office records. I think 4 times more than the previous record holder in terms of Irish language films in Ireland, in the UK. And just to put it in perspective, I think less than like 40% of even people in Ireland are fluent in the Irish language. So this is really like bringing it on another platform. But just to get into the story, it's set in rural Ireland in 1981, and it's about this quiet, neglected girl. She's sent away from her dysfunctional, overcrowded family, and sent to live with these foster parents for the summer, and her whole world sort of opens up in that summer. Can you talk about that world, where you were filming? It's just sort of it looks like a magical place on screen. Just the outdoor sequences, like Ireland in 1981, just seems beautiful visually.
Yeah, it's certainly a kind of a character in the film. I think the various environments that we filmed in. Yeah, I mean, it is, as you said, it's a story that's set in 1981. So it's, on one hand, Ireland is still very beautiful. And, if you go to Ireland, you'll see places like that. But Irish society has changed hugely in that time. Like that's essentially my own lifetime. Like I was born in 1981. I was born in the year that this film is set. And I kind of feel like within my lifetime, I've sort of straddled these two Irelands, like what we once were to what we now are, which is a very progressive and kind of forward-thinking and largely secular society. And I guess like the impulse to make the film was born of that understanding. That I kind of came from a different Ireland in a sense, and I've lived through this big change. And also born of a particular interest in the stories of children. All of my this is my first feature film, and all of my short dramas prior to this have always centered on young protagonists. And as a country, we haven't always lived up to the promises of our own proclamation of independence. Which is to cherish all the children of the nation equally. That we failed our younger citizens in many ways. Since we gained our independence over the last kind of 100 years. So it was born of an impulse to kind of give a child from that old Ireland sort of center stage, and to give her agency and give her a voice. And I had also become a father just somewhat 2 years before I encountered this story. So I was, it was kind of came from a place also of almost like a paternal instinct of wanting to cherish this young child who existed in this piece of fiction by Claire Keegan, and just sort of railing against that society that used to that didn't value children perhaps in quite the same way. And that was just really potent for me at that time, because I had just become a father, and so you had this understanding, this very visceral understanding of what a child needs and what a child deserves, and so it was certainly a response to all of those things. And I should just say, like as I said, I just alluded to there, our film is an adaptation. It's based on a long short story called Foster, written by Claire Keegan, and Claire is one of our absolute best authors at the moment. Her most recent work was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. So again, that was just an extraordinary privilege and an honor to be given access to that, what I consider to be really precious material. This story is the story Foster. Young people in Ireland will be relatively familiar with it because it's part of the school curriculum as well. So it's a much loved story, and so yeah, it was kind of a daunting but also a real privileged kind of position to be in to get to adapt it.
And you mentioned it's your first, feature film that you've directed. You've done some other things, but it's also the first film for Catherine Clinch, who stars in the film. She's fantastic. So what was that like being a new feature film director working with a star of the film that's never done a movie before?
Well, I guess because, like, as I said, all of my short dramas had sort of centered on young people. I was kind of familiar with that process, you know, of working with younger actors, who are like almost always, you know, unknowns, you know, people that you've just found or whatever, you know, that don't have any acting experience or whatever. But Catherine was extraordinary. You know, it took us 7 months to find her. So we would have begun casting like pre-COVID. So we were seeing like hundreds of young people just in open auditions. And then COVID came along and we had to like shift to self-tapes. And, you know, again, like because it's an Irish language story, you know, you need someone who's fluent in the language. So luckily there is like a network of primary schools in Ireland that are entirely Irish language based. Now they are in and of themselves, they're a minority within the education system, but they do exist. So there are these schools where you have children going to school every day and they do all of their subjects in the Irish language. So they're all fluent in the Irish language, which is a real beacon of hope for the future of the language. But we basically use that network. We put out a call to those schools for anyone who'd be interested in auditioning. And we got a self-tape in one day from Catherine Clinch, and yeah, it was just incredible. Like she just had this innate understanding of the character, and she understood that this was a young girl who had learned to sort of push all of her emotions inwards, which to me that's the most interesting kind of performance for a camera to observe, you know, which is a character that's withholding in that sense. And she seemed to have this innate understanding of that and of the camera's sort of ability to witness that kind of performance, you know. And even though she'd never acted in front of a camera before, she just had this sort of willingness to allow the camera to see her. So yeah, it was extraordinary. And she kind of set the tone for the whole film. You know, we were, in a strange way, we were all kind of following her, you know. It was really quite extraordinary. And there's something about her. She kind of has like this wise soul, you know. She feels like she's been here before in some sense. So it was never, in a sense, it was kind of like dealing with an adult in a strange kind of way. It was, she's just a remarkable young woman, you know.
Well, Colm, it's an incredible, heartwarming film, and thanks for spending time with me to talk about The Quiet Girl, and best of luck with, you know, upcoming Oscar nominations, everything else in between, and enjoy the time that you have.
Thank you so much, Denton.
I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Toufik Ayadi and Christophe Barral, producers of Saint Omer, France's entry for Best International Film at the 95th Academy Awards. It's directed by Alice Diop, but I'd like to first ask, how does it feel to represent France this year at the Oscars as producers, and what do you hope this says about French cinema?
Well, we are very happy and honored that we have been chosen by France. You know, France in a way can be a bit conservative in the movie that he chooses and the movie that you see are made in France. So we are very happy to have the first Black female director to represent France, because it changed the representation that people have in France of who can do cinema and who should be making cinema, and it's giving hope to a lot of people. And the being chosen is also known by the public, and the public goes to see the movie that has been chosen by France. So that's good, and it changed the regards that we can have on a society. You know, Alice comes from a documentary, so she had a very marginal audience previous to this film, and with the fiction, it gives us a bigger audience, and it's important for her. She always says that you know, a movie cannot change the world, but a movie can change a spectator. And it's important that in that period after the COVID battle, where we have to do that battle for cinema, winning spectator by spectator is the way we want to go, and we want to make her movie.
Toufik, how did you meet Alice? You two have worked a lot with first-time and second-time directors. So, how did you initially meet Alice, and then decide to move forward with this film of hers that's based on true events? It's about a Senegalese immigrant accused of murdering her 15-month-old baby. So it's, a very serious topic. And just, can you talk about how that originated with Alice and you?
Hi all, Santiago, Stacy, Edward, there is a lot of people and good people. Congratulations for all. I will try to speak in English and in French, and Asia we meet with Christophe Alice about maybe 8 years ago. It's we see a documentary from Alice. A comedian and actor was playing in this documentary, and when we see this movie with Christophe, we see we see cinema, in this documentary. And after we call her, we take a coffee, in French, and in this kind of when you meet someone like Alice, it's between a producer and a director, there is something we'll catch, quelque chose qui se passe directement. Il y a une énergie qui nous traverse et une envie de se dire qu'on va essayer de faire quelque chose ensemble.
Something happens immediately between the director and the producer. There's an imminent energy and a desire to try and create something together.
Et à ce moment-là, notre envie, c'était d'aller vers la fiction. Et donc, naturellement, on a fait Vers la tendresse, qui était un docu-fiction, pour qu'elle garde ses repères du documentaire et en même temps qu'elle commence à exploiter la fiction.
And at that moment, we had the desire to move toward fiction, which we did with a first docu-fiction project called Toward Tenderness, which was going to allow her to keep her marks in documentary and move towards a more fictional feature.
Et Saint Omer, I'm thinking it was Alice called me and Christophe and said, "Hi guys, yes. Do you see this story? Do you see what's happened with this woman in 2013? Oh no, there is le procès. Comment on dit le procès?
The trial.
There is a trial of this woman. Okay, when? This Saturday. Okay, I want to go because there is something which I have to see in this trial. I am fascinated about this story, about this woman. She never say there is a movie in this story. She just say, I have to go. I have to heard some things. I have to see what happened in this trial. And all days she was calling me and Christophe to speak about what happened in the day, what they say, what do she heard, and what and how this story is universal. And after, when she come back, she tried to say, okay, how I can write a script. I will write it maybe with my editing, comment on dit la monteuse? Editor. It could be something more specific. Maybe I have to search something. And when you produce movie like Alice Diop movie or another movie, you are always searching, and you have to on doit l'accompagner pour qu'elle cherche et qu'elle prenne le temps de chercher pour trouver en fait sa manière de faire et sa manière d'écrire le scénario.
We had to accompany her so that she would have the space and the time to intuitively find her own way of making and writing the script.
And after we write the script.
And Christophe, the film it's intense. I mean, there's these incredibly long shots, particularly of the character Lawrence Coley, the mother that's on trial. What surprised you or interested you the most about Alice's way of filmmaking? I mean, for me, it was very unique. I mean, because you see that long shot and the actress's face is so focused. Is that her documentarian side coming out, or what did you think about her filmmaking style?
I think it's a very complex process. You know, it's something that Alice has to maturate, and you're right. Well, Alice says also that there is cinema. I mean, there is fiction in documentary, and there is documentary in fiction, and that's how she starts our process. And it was a very complex. We discussed a lot of what did the mise en scène mean. You know, how did we do that mise en scène? First of all, she started to cast her two comedians during 1 year, and I think we did 1 year of casting. But I think that she had the idea of who she wanted to cast. I mean, she had an intuition. Like when she went to that process, she had an intuition that and maybe an obsession of what she would find there, but she didn't know. And she knew Kaije and she knew Guslagi before she cast them, and she saw them, and she saw so many girls during 1 year, and then she had to try to find a good way. And I think it was the same thing for those shots and for the mise en scène. We had the chance to work with Claire Maton, who's a great DOP and who did an incredible work working with Alice. And they see in the trial, they were really influenced by paintings, by other movies like Clouseau, The Truth, or In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. You know, they had all those things, and that's basically a long process, you know, on how they start to look for things and how they get there. But it was not an idea that was there at the moment of the script. It's something that grew inside Alice, and when she came on the set, she felt that's the way she wanted to do it, but it was not conscious a long time before that.
And can you speak about casting the film, particularly the two women it's centered around who play Lawrence, the woman on trial, and Rama, a pregnant novelist attending the trial who begins to really see more of herself in Lawrence than she anticipates? How did you get to those two actresses who give such emotional performances in the film?
Well, that's a bit what I said. I mean, we Alice had some. Kaije, Kagame, and Guslagi. Kaije is a great. She works also in theater, living.
Theater.
Yeah, and she lives in Geneva in Switzerland. She's not in Paris, but Alice saw her in several plays that she did, and she had that idea always there that she could be Rama. Guslagi worked very work in cinema, but she had very few opportunities. She had one big role in Jean-Paul Siverac movies, but she hasn't made movies. She didn't make so much movies for 7 years. And when I mean, those two were always in the head of Alice, but she did that casting during 1 year. She tried a lot, and that's also true to say that there is a lack of those new comedians in France, black comedians, you know, because they didn't get the opportunity, or they didn't get the enter to the school. So there is a lack of that. And that intuition that she had from the beginning, she came back to that intuition at the end, and she tried to basically she did the movie with those two.
Toufik and Christophe, thanks for spending time with me to talk about Saint Omer, and best of luck with everything going forward with the Oscars and everything in between, and enjoy every moment of it. Congratulations on the film. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, and welcome to our Film International Feature Panel. I'm here with Edward Berger, Director of All Quiet on the Western Front for Germany, Santiago Mitre, Director of Argentina, 1985 for Argentina, Stacy Perskie, Producer for Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths for Mexico, Toufik Ayadi and Christophe Barral, producers of Saint Omer for France, and Colm Bairéad, director for The Quiet Girl for Ireland. Welcome everyone. Celebrations for being official Oscar entries for each of your respective countries. It's fun to see everyone together and have this group panel. I'm going to start off by asking each one of you, and I'll start with Edward, actually. What was the film or filmmaker that had a large or maybe the largest influence on you from an early age that made you say, I want to become a filmmaker? After a movie, director, actor, the first major one that comes to your mind.
Apocalypse Now.
Why?
Fittingly.
Why? What was it about that film?
Oh, why? Well, just because it was so I liked that it wasn't a story. That it wasn't, or it is a story, but it wasn't narratively. It was more of a collage, I guess, and it tried to capture more of, I guess, the essence of it was what it was trying to say about war, rather than telling a story about it. And so I really enjoyed that. I could immerse myself in that film and let myself fall into it and just drift around it. And I watched it. I didn't really understand it, so I had to watch it again and didn't understand it again, and I probably still don't understand it. So that's a great thing that you can keep rewatching it.
Santiago, how about you?
I mean, the question is for as a child. You mean when I started to get interested in cinema, or
yeah, what film or filmmaker excited you?
No, I mean, because if I have to say, which is the filmmaker that I love the most in history, of course there's many, but I'm really a real big fan of Roberto Rossellini. I think his approach in cinema is very unique. The realism work, how he works, and the political, mystical, and social aspects of his cinema. Beside the great cinematography and acting and everything. It's something that amazed me. But if I have to talk as a child, I suppose it was Steven Spielberg. I mean, I was born in the 80s and grew up in that period where he did all those magnificent films. And then he keeps being one of the best filmmakers in history nowadays. So it's, I still love Spielberg also.
Stacy, what's the first one you remember impacting you?
Well, it's a difficult one. I would have to agree with Steven Spielberg and for me, E.T., but I would say that something that really influenced me, as kind of like an early teenager, like seeing Pulp Fiction for the first time and, Quentin Tarantino and kind of the way that was written and the performances and how everything kind of was intertwined together, for me was like a huge inspiration and wanted me. I already, from a young age as a child, I always wanted to become a filmmaker, but that was a huge inspiration for sure.
And Christophe, how about you?
Well, I'm just a producer, but it's strange because I'm sure that if Alice was there, she would have answered Frederick Wiseman. I know she was very influenced by Frederick Wiseman, or on French cineast, maybe Claire Denis. But for me, it was more the new Hollywood period. As a teenager, I mean, I was really, in the Scorsese movie, Coppola movie, all that crew, basically.
And Colm, how about you?
I would say like my most watched film when I was young was actually a Charlie Chaplin film, Modern Times, because like my dad hated us watching TV. My dad like hated television, so he kind of just, our exposure to like that box in the corner, he tried to control that, and he sort of gave us our film education and started at the beginning with like silent film and, you know, all these VHSs that he would buy. So Modern Times, I just watched that over and over and over. And, you know, it's a masterpiece, but I remember that there was just something about like some of like the basic techniques in it that were just so arresting to me as a young person, you know, where he would do these he would have these like shots of like the workers heading into the factory, and then he would like jump cut to these sheep, you know, walking along. And as a young person, just understanding, it's a very blunt kind of a tool, but it gave you a very kind of strong impression of like the power of cinema and what you can do with the juxtaposition of imagery and so forth. But then that, you know, after that, all the filmmakers that you guys have all mentioned were certainly hugely influential. But I guess like when I kind of came of age a little bit more, I would say I really admire the work of Lynn Ramsey, in particular her short films. I think they're like some of the best short films that have ever been made. I think like Gas Man is like one of my favorite films, full stop, like regardless of length. So, but yeah, they're kind of my heroes.
Toufik, I'll ask you a different question. I'm curious to know, at what age did you decide you were going to go pursue the film business? And what advice would you give yourself now to yourself at 18 or 25 years old?
Je vais la faire en français, je pense, qu'en anglais. J'ai jamais décidé de faire du cinéma. C'est parce que je cherchais du travail à 20 ans et je suis devenu stagiaire régie. Vas-y, Asia.
I didn't ever decide to start working in the cinema. I was looking for work at the age of 20, and I started working as an intern on film sets.
And I discovered like there is kind of movie, personal movie, which exists. And at this time, I want j'ai toujours voulu en fait essayer de faire exister des films comme cela, des films plus personnels, des films d'auteur.
And it is in working on these films that I discovered the existence of a more personal kind of films than the ones I was exposed to. And if there was a decision, it was a decision to help these kinds of films exist, more personal auteur films.
Et à quel âge? Je dirais que, en fait, il n'y a pas d'âge pour faire du cinéma. Il faut, si j'avais un conseil à donner, c'est si on a envie de faire du cinéma, essayons de travailler à n'importe quel endroit, n'importe quel poste, parce qu'on découvre tellement de gens et de techniciens et de magie que c'est là où on se sentira plus sûr de ce qu'on veut faire.
And so if I do have a piece of advice, it is precisely that there is no age to start working in the cinema, and that's a desire that somebody has. Working in any sector of any technical sector will be magical in and of itself, as a way to decide what needs to be done going forward.
Santiago, can you tell us briefly about what your path to filmmaking was, and you know what you've learned now that you would tell your previous self to watch out for?
I had a teacher when I was 12 years old, a history teacher, that she had the very good idea that to ask us for, instead of doing written monographies or the things to do into the school, she asked us to do a short film about some specific periods of history. Well, I mean, it was in the 80s, so many people started to have the handycams, like the small VHS compact or whatever. So, or we have a cousin that has it or whatever. So we started to, and that was I went. I didn't, at that point, I think I thought the actors were the one who were doing the films. I didn't know that even a director existed. For me, so I mean, I was really involved, and I wanted to do the part of that short film. But I was there. I was taking the decisions also. But and then, well, my father explained me that it was there that the figure of a director who takes the decision on what you see on the image existed. So for me, it was enlightening that, what? That's a director. There's one who's taking the decisions of the films I'm watching. So it was something enlightening. And since that moment, I started to be interested in cinema and watching the more and more. And I get into film school right away after I finish regular school. And watch and advice is, I don't know, I mean, to watch the more films you can and to try to watch the more theater plays you can, to read the more you can. It's like you always have to be in connection with history and with present.
Colm, I'm going to go to you next, and talk about your path to where you are and things that you could or would have done differently.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like, I'm not sure I'd change anything. And, I think we're all sat here today with all of these kind of wonderful films precisely because of all of the things that we've been through, all of the decisions we made and maybe the mistakes we made, but mistakes are important as well, So I don't think I would actually, if I was able to go back 20 years, I don't think I'd say anything different. I'd just say, just keep going. It's, it's all a mystery. You got to just go out there and find your own voice and find your own path. And it's led to here. So if I was to change anything in the past, like Back to the Future style, maybe I wouldn't be on this call. Maybe I wouldn't have made this film. And I just feel really happy that this is the first film that I've made. It feels like the one, there were other ones that almost happened, and I'm glad they didn't, because this feels like the one that's closest to my sensibility and to my own heart as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily. Maybe as Santiago said, maybe watch more films. There's a few on my list that I'm still getting through, so maybe that's the only thing. But yeah, apart from that, I'd say just keep going.
Yeah, you didn't have a bad start. I think like 7 Irish Academy Awards or something for your first movie, so you're doing okay. Stacy, how about you? What was your sort of introduction to life in film and as a producer and your journey?
As a young child, when I was 6-7 years old, my mother was a photographer, and she worked a little bit in film in different capacities. She also worked kind of like a little bit in art departments when I was growing up. And, I had the opportunity to spend time after school every day in the set of Dune, David Lynch's film, Dune, which was filmed in Mexico City. And I was just like, I fell in love with, I was so intrigued by the process and being on set and watching everyone and watching kind of like everything come together, that was kind of like one of the first kind of huge hints of inspiration that I wanted to do that. And then, when I was a teenager after school, I would go to the film studios in Mexico City and try to kind of work as a, quote unquote intern, whatever they could give me to do, and so I started to spend a lot of time as a teenager in sets in the afternoons every day. So, I just fell in love with it. And obviously, as I mentioned before, I loved watching films as well. So, it was the combination of being in love with films and also the filmmaking process.
And Edward, how about your journey into this business that's led you here?
It's a little bit similar to Santiago. Something he said reminded me of how I thought of this. So I always thought there's actors and they make the movie and then, we see it and they do something. And I never spent a minute thinking how they're made, because I come from a city where they make cars in Germany. So and that's basically everyone's an engineer or a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, a tennis coach, or baker, something. So I didn't know that filmmaking was a job. And when I was 14, we went to, but I always loved going to the cinema. And when I was 14, we went to the next biggest city and there was an art school. And in that art school, they had a film class. And I suddenly realized, what? You can study this? That's ridiculous. Why didn't I know about this? And then I went home and I was so enthused. And I said, there's a film, you can study film and you can learn this stuff. And then my brother just looked at me and said, well, you're going to have to drive cabs later. And then I forgot about it. I said, oh, it really, I found it disheartening, And then when I had to make up my mind at 18 or 19 of what I wanted to do, it just came, it stuck with me. And I said, and my brothers were engineers, and my sister did something else. And so I came and I suddenly thought, I don't want to be an engineer. And then I just I want to do what I really loved doing and watching and what enthused me so much when I went to that school. And so I just pursued that.
And what advice would you give your younger self if you had the opportunity?
When in Germany, when you try to apply to film school, they ask you to have studied something before or learned something else or be carpenter or travel for a couple of years or do internships in movies, whatever, just gain sort of experience doing something. And I never understood that until I sort of made my second movie and I suddenly realized it was too early. I didn't have enough to say it. I didn't know what I was going to tell. You can always make a first movie and it comes out of you. And the second movie, sort of, I realized I'm too empty. There's nothing inside yet. So I think just patience, maybe. I needed that, and just patience and stick with it and just keep doing it, and just because it is mostly about what you have to say. That's mostly what it is about.
And you mentioned that that you came from a family that does different things. So did everyone sort of have that experience? I mean, is everyone sort of doing their own thing here?
Oh yeah.
Just raise
it wasn't like we were
the only filmmaker in the family.
I actually am. I'm yeah. Oh, everyone! You're asking all of us. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, just a group question.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Oh, I was just curious if you're the only filmmaker in the family, or like if this is rare for you.
Yeah, I'm the only one.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining me today. You made 5 incredible films representing each of your countries so beautifully. So I'm happy to be giving this spotlight on the way to Oscar selections, and best of luck to all of you. Thanks once again for joining us on this Gold Derby Film International feature panel, and I appreciate your time.